Stokastic baseball fans. Terry McBride here. Saturday show. We're just talking about it, kind of our new regular time slot, at least for the last few weeks, this six to seven kind of hour, live before lock for the baseball slate. I'm here with my pal Gundacker. I left a barbecue to be here for everybody. It was pretty delicious. Apologies to everybody over there. Jen, everything was fantastic. My buddy Jen, Charlie's wife, Jen, made a fantastic meal. She was working the grill. I don't know what he was doing. He was just kind of sitting off to the side, like watching her and, letting her do everything. But Gun, how's your Saturday been so far?
I've been conscious for about 2 hours now. So,
okay. So typical Saturday for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was in and out for the Yankee game. I saw Judge hit another bomb, and then I was like, yeah, well, we win in this game. I can finish my slumber. And then now we're here, maybe some baseball, maybe some SummerSlam. And I got some grape Kool-Aid. So I haven't been to a barbecue, but I might get a plate if I bring my Callan over.
There we go. I like it. So, I mean, with all the sleep that you get on Saturday night, should I be asking you these days when we do these shows, should I ask you how your Friday night was instead? Like that, do we have a really solid Friday night that led to that sleep, or are you just like up playing Fortnite?
Yeah, I literally up playing Fortnite. I mean, we're watching.
Okay. I mean, that's the same as my Friday night was. Mine is not Fortnite, but a different game.
Yeah, there's some weekends I'll go out and hit a wrestling show, but for the most part, I'm a homebody. When it's 105 degrees outside, we don't open the door.
Fair enough. Yeah, I wouldn't want to crack the front door or window or anything like that. Nice. Stay inside, get some good streaming going. Guys, we're brought to you by Yahoo today. Our pals over at Yahoo. We'll talk about them in a little bit. I got to find where my run sheet's hiding here. There it is. So we'll talk about Yahoo in a little bit. Make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button down there. It helps us out a great deal. We always appreciate that. You guys know the drill by now. All the data, all the info, all the links and everything that we're going to talk about that you guys need, it's also right down there underneath the little thumbs up. So it's pretty convenient. Drop down a thumb, click that, then scroll down, look for these links that we're about to talk about. If you hit the like and subscribe, you can jump over also to the site. We've got free ownership projections for the MLB slate up on the site. If you want to try out all of our tools for MLB DFS, you can. We've set all the tools and projections for the night slates to be 100% free. So it's like 2, 3, 4 game night slates. Great way to get in. The fields are smaller. You can build some weird lineups and compete pretty easily for pretty big prizes. So nice little spot to go there. Those are 100% free over at the site now if you're on the fence about subscribing. We've also got a special live before lock offer with BetMGM. This is your last chance to cash in on this, guys. It's ending July 31st. That's tomorrow. So when we do the show tomorrow, we'll be talking about it being your last chance. But I mean, come on, Saturday night, it's the fun night to bet. So this is really your last chance. Get your $10 bet in on any MLB money line. You win $200 for free. That's it. Money in, $200 out. Not too bad. Doesn't matter what you bet on. If you get a chance, go over to our tools, find a good bet to make, take advantage. But $10 in at BetMGM, $200 out. Not too bad. There's a link in the description. Make sure you hit the like and the subscribe on the way down. Gun, that takes care of business for a few minutes, thankfully, because nobody wants to hear me ranting and raving. Let's talk some baseball. First up on deck, Seattle Mariners against the Houston Astros. Chris Flexen against Framber Valdez. I haven't really been a big Chris Flexen guy over the years, but he does, pitch effectively from time to time in spots. I don't really expect that from him here against this Astros team. Framber on the other side, questionable for DFS purposes from time to time, but an excellent real life pitcher and having a very nice year. What are you doing with these pitchers? Because I mean, there's a very big price and ownership discrepancy in one guy's favor here.
Yeah, I mean, Flexen just really, it doesn't inspire me, first and foremost, just because of him as a low K guy. We're working with a, 16% K rate on the season. And then he's facing a really tough to strike out Astros lineup where Pena and Martin Maldonado are really only guys with above 20% K rates against righties. And the rest of this lineup is starting to look like a healthy Astros lineup. So I'm probably just going to sit out Flexen. I'll get to the Astros bats. Framber Valdez, He's the best. I won't say the best, but he's one of the better options on the slate. The last couple of nights, I feel like we've been spoiled with great pitching options. Tonight, not that. This is not that. And we're giving Valdez almost over a quarter of a 26% chance of being a top 2 pitcher over on DK, and he's pushing 40% ownership. And normally 40% own Framber Valdez, something I'll sit out. But man, tonight I have to get to him just because pitching is that shallow. So unfortunately, I will be there on Framber, but I will be kind of hedging back with a couple of these Julio or these Mariners bats. Maybe they're a little spiced up after getting Castillo yesterday. Valdez, always been a guy I prefer on FanDuel just because of his ability to go a little bit deeper, scoop out that quality start, maybe compensate for lack of strikeouts. But in the DraftKings sense, if you got a shot at 20 fantasy points tonight, that's really a glorious thing. And I think Valdez can get there.
Yeah, definitely one of your thinner spots. The talented pitchers, in some pretty tricky matchups. Like you said, Valdez just might be a nice spot to pitch clean. And he's a guy who does that with regularity. We see it all the time, a 4.5% barrel rate on the season, negative 3.5 degree average launch angle. Last year, he had a 70% ground ball rate for the entire season. I don't know what it's at this year, but I'm sure it's in relatively similar territory. 3.16 xFIP. It's just a little bit of a lack of strikeouts, but those are up a little, 22.1%. So I can definitely get there. Are you looking to be around the field, above the field on each site? Like at 25% on FanDuel, that's probably my upper limit still with one pitcher per site. And I'd probably end up like 18 to 20 maybe, and I'm happy there, but I'll have a lot. What about on DK? What are you looking to do with ownership relative to the field on FanDuel?
So I am coming in well under. I'm about 25, 28%. I haven't finalized that, but that is lower than our near 40% cut. I'm getting a very uncomfortable amount of Cueto and Suarez. So,
you too.
Yeah. So
I'm so glad I'm not alone on that island.
Yeah.
We'll talk about those two guys in just a minute, but not comfy. They're sitting up near the top of my board. It's just that kind of slate. So I'm going to have a healthy dose of them, but I'm hoping to offset it with some just, relative safety and quality out of Framber here. What about the bats? You mentioned, maybe the Mariners coming to this one with a little bit of energy, a little bit of momentum coming off the big Castillo trade. Great acquisition for them. Should make it fun. I was hoping the Yanks would get him, quite honestly. And it's an interesting trade too. I think with the inclusion of their big shortstop prospect, that probably means that Cashman slammed the brakes on including a Volpe, including an Oswaldo Peraza. So it'll be interesting to see, when the details trickle out there. But let's talk about Mariners bats. I like Julio Rodriguez in most situations. Going up against Framber, it's tough because of all the ground balls, but he does have a ton of speed. So maybe he's a guy you can think maybe gets on a few times based on his speed. What do you like from Julio down in this Mariners lineup?
Yeah, I mean, Julio's obviously at the tippy top. You mentioned it, Valdez, ridiculous ground ball rate. So challenge, get on base. And I think, they make a statement here. If Julio gets on, he's going to be a risk to run, even with the lefty on. Nothing pre-flop is something that's going to profile somebody we love because we target power here. And this guy's sending balls directly into the dirt. But just generally speaking, if I'm just betting on talent, Julio's at the top. I can get to some Ty France for sure. He bats over 300 against lefties since the beginning of last year. And then, Eugenio Suarez, if we can neutralize his 33% K rate with Valdez's 21% K rate and his want to make contact, maybe he sneaks into one. But it's hard to justify any of these plays based on the matchup. We're just I'm just kind of getting there to maybe hedge a little bit of the ownership here. And then ground ball pitchers, sometimes they bleed through and BABIP will eat you up, even though this is a stellar defense behind him.
Yeah, and that's another thing about this equation. It's a tough spot to attack. I would normally be looking to grab some low on Mariners bats. I like this team a lot, and it would make some sense to attack that ownership. But even if he wasn't that highly owned, I don't think that I would have all that much appeal in going to the Mariners here. He profiles so well at cutting down power, like you were getting at. And guys in the middle of the lineup, like Eugenio Suarez, his number for a home run is basically cut in half from what it normally averages in my home run model, just as an example. So it's a tough spot. What about the other side? Throwing some Astros bats at a guy like Chris Flexen. Looks like they're only in single digits on both sites, which I find kind of surprising. You mentioned already Flexen only 16.5% strikeout rate for the season. Also a 4.93 xFIP. Doesn't allow a ton of home runs, but plenty of hard hit, plenty of barrel. What am I missing that the public's not really getting there? Is it just the Coors effect and the Atlanta effect?
Yeah, they're in the shadow of the massive run totals for the Dodgers and the Braves. We got them at like a 4.5% chance to be the top stack. I'd be willing to come in a little bit higher on that. Chris Flexen, so far this season against righties, a sub 15% K rate, over 5 xFIP, a 1.64 home run per 9. There are some powerful righties in this lineup. Alex Bregman is coming in with a high model rating in my bond detector. Altuve, we know he loves to jump on that first pitch fastball. And then, Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker exist. Like we said, I think the price points, even Altuve and Yordan being the only guys over 5K, it's not that hard to get to the Astros and be there. And I think results wise, Flexen doesn't have a high home run per night to lefties, but the batted ball data doesn't really back that up. His ground ball rate to lefties only 32%. He's putting balls in the air. The what's saving him is this low hard contact rate. And I trust in a guy like Alvarez and Kyle Tucker to hit with some oomph. So I think the Astros are a really good looking stack at 4% owned on a slate this small.
Yeah, it just seems like there's not enough of the field there. I get why people want to go to and flock toward those big, over 6 run totals, approaching 7 for the Dodgers. There's a lot of availability of scoring there, but this is a great lineup. It's a good form of this lineup. You've got a lot of cheap low-owned guys toward the back that are capable, like an Aledmys Diaz with 3-position eligibility, 2,500 on FanDuel. We saw him go off just last night. I mean, he's capable, not saying he's going to go out and hit you 2 home runs again today, but he's capable of delivering a nice, solid game, correlated scoring, et cetera, et cetera. Mauricio Dubon, even down toward the bottom of the lineup, dead minimum price on FanDuel, playable asset in the middle of that lineup too, multi-position eligibility. So there's a lot of ways to put it together. And really, like you said, only Altuve and Jordan Alvarez drawing a lot of price. So I'm going to look to get to this stack pretty aggressively as things come together. Anything else to call out from this game, or should we move on to the next
one?
No. Let's take a look at Oakland Athletics versus the Chicago White Sox. Athletics 3.6 run implied total, 4.5 for the White Sox, at least as of when I did this run sheet a few hours ago. So it's probably a little higher. Paul Blackburn on the hill for the A's. Johnny Cueto answering back from the White Sox. Not the most comfortable pitchers to be rostering, but we mentioned Johnny Cueto already, and we both seem to be getting to him. So why don't we start there? Let's talk some Johnny Cueto.
Yeah, man. My boy Eric Lindquist the other night, or it was last night or the night before, talking about how he didn't like Lance Lynn against the A's, and he just kind of got there. And what I tweeted at him was, I would play him under 7K against the A's, man. They just suck, unfortunately. And Johnny Cueto is one of those guys I don't trust, kind of like a Lance Lynn. But as shallow as this pitching pool is, man, I'm kind of ending up with a lot of 8,900 Cueto, and I'm hoping, give me 16 fantasy points, let's get out. And that's how low my standard is at pitching tonight. It's a bat night for me. So I'm just kind of banking on this Athletics team to continue to not be good, and then Johnny Cueto to continue to pull rabbits out of his hat. His ERA is definitely outshining his underlying metrics, the Sierra expected ERA, WHIP. WHIP isn't atrocious, but it's definitely not what you would want to be. The expected ERA just under 4. We can live with that against the A's. So I'm hoping the matchup just kind of creates a floor and maybe even a surprising ceiling for Cueto. No comfort, but he is one of my 2 highest owned pitchers.
Yeah, I'm going to be right there with you. Even on the site where we only get one of these shots at pitcher, I'll be over the field on Johnny Cueto, unfortunately, just based on how he's projecting out. And he's 9,900 on the FanDuel site for a reason. He's got a great matchup against this atrocious A's team. So nobody in the 2 people in the confirmed A's lineup. Sean Murphy and Ramon Laureano are the only 2 players in that lineup creating runs anywhere near above average. So it is not a good team. It's an easy one to attack. I get it. Any love for Paul Blackburn, the all-star from the A's, coming back the other way, 19.2% strikeout rate, 3.90 xFIP, going up against a pretty good, healthier version of this White Sox lineup?
Not specifically. I would guess since our standards are so low, at 6,700, you can make a case to fill a SB2, hope for a 10 fantasy points. White Sox have been below average in WRC plus against righties, but like you said, lineup's starting to get balanced here. Moncada, Grandal back in the mix here. Gavin Sheets, 3 lefties. The other day they had 4 lefties in this lineup, and that was the most balanced we've seen them from them all year. So I'm kind of expect them to regress or progress to the mean in against righties. And then Blackburn just doesn't really offer a ton of upsides or eraser opportunity if he allows some runs. Sub 20% K rate overall, over $1.25 on the WHIP. I tend to not want to, but I definitely understand it in the context of this slate for probably DraftKings only in an SB2 spot. If you played him praying for 10 plus, I think that's justifiable to stack the bats. But right now I'm not really there.
Yeah, and that's where I would see it. I don't think I need to get there on the FanDuel slate. I think there's, as thin as things might be, I think there's enough that I don't have to go to that level. So probably a lot less interested there. But at the 2.9% ownership that we're seeing for him on the DK slate, 8.7% probability of being a top 2, giving you a nice value score, there's enough reason to get to him for a few shares at the SB2 spot. It's easy enough to get beyond the field at 2.9%. Just double that, even triple it, and you're sitting fine. You're still under 10% of your shares. It's easy enough to do. So I think you can get there. You can justify it over there, but you got to make sure, like you said, that you're spending your money wisely on bats. With that in mind, I assume that you're not getting to much of the Athletics. It does look like some people are getting to the top end of that lineup, the top 4 hitters, at least on the DK slate. So talk to me about the A's. Are you going that way? Because I'm sure not.
I'm not. If Cueto, falls flat here, I wouldn't be stunned here. But even, Cueto, as much as he doesn't miss bats, he doesn't really give up a lot of power. If I were to pick on him, I'd want to get some lefties. He has almost a 5x FIP to lefties, sub 15% K rate. So I guess Machin, Tony Kemp, and Seth Brown are technically lefties. Seth Brown would be the guy I look at with a 240 plus ISO against righties since the beginning of last year if I was really trying to hunt some power. I guess they're just really dirt cheap, good lineup spot on the road, probably implying for 4 or 5 at bats. If you're pinching pennies, that's that. But yeah.
Yeah, you're really pinching pennies, and you're getting some people on the more interesting bats there, like Seth Brown, second highest home run mark behind Eloy Jimenez on the other side on either team for me in my home run model. So there's a little bit of meat on the bone there. It's just up and down as a full stack anyway. It's just not a good lineup. And a lot of other teams in the league, I would be saying, all right, Johnny Cueto on the hill, we can roster this team just based on that. I'm kind of leaning toward the other side, as uncomfortable as that makes me. So after we're kind of discarding the Athletics, what about the White Sox going up against Blackburn, since we're not touching him on the mound? And we talked about some of the contact that's available there. Not a huge guy for giving up home runs either, a 2.58% home run rate, respectable in the barrel rate. But are we grabbing some of the healthier White Sox and their more interesting version of their lineup at low ownership against Blackburn here?
Blackburn feels a lot like Flexen in the sense that, there's more contact than not. I think Blackburn is going to get a little bit of step up in terms of a little bit better strikeout rate and a little bit better ground ball rate. So he's not as fun to target, but those ground balls could bleed through, and guys with speed, Timmy Anderson, guys like that, couldn't make it a problem. And then if I were to pick a side, I think lefties against Blackburn do have some opportunity. He allows a 271 average so far this season against lefties and an over 1 home run per 9. So maybe a guy like Moncada or Yasmani Grandal can sneak into one. I'm with you. I'm not getting massive power grades from either side, and I do think that is a product of the very low hard contact rate that Blackburn's allowing. We're at against lefties 28%, against righties 29%, so well below league average. So not really numbers that generate a ton of power and ton of hope for upside, but I would be willing to get the White Sox just banking on a blanket of talent here, and just trying to diversify the portfolio a little bit. There's not a lot of teams on the slate. We have the White Sox coming in at 2% owned, 4% chance of being a top stack. So even a little bit of positive leverage there. So I would get to some White Sox, but wouldn't be like an extravagant number.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. I'm kind of just looking at them as a good way to diversify. You get above just naturally by rostering a few shares of this team as a stack. You're going to be above the field on most of these hitters because they're all in the low single digits for ownership on both sites. So you get above the field on what is a good lineup. Maybe the spot isn't great, but you can take something of a bet on talent at these good prices and that low ownership on a slate where there are some very concentrated spots of ownership around the very good points. And then a lot of things that, don't necessarily look all that much better than the White Sox in this version of this lineup going up against Blackburn here. So I do think it's an interesting spot to squeeze above the field there. Let's knock out a piece of business here. Dog's whining over there, apparently. What's the matter, pal? Can you keep it down for a minute? We're in the middle of business here. Keep it down. We got an ad read to do. All right. Took care of that. Stokastic Plus. You guys are familiar with Stokastic at this point. Get access to all the great Stokastic Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with the Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. The Platinum, guys, if you've watched any of our shows, been to the site before, you know this. Platinum's the one that includes everything. It includes the projections, the ownership projections, tools like the top pitchers, the top stacks, these things that we're referring to constantly on the shows. And the guys behind the scenes are always working on new tools, rolling out cool new stuff. We've seen a bunch of different previews of new things that are coming and new ways to present some of this data. Really works nicely. So a lot of good things coming from Stokastic. It's the right time to get behind the scenes. We've got football starting up in a little bit. There's a lot coming down the pipe. So jump on the Platinum Pass, and you can save 50% on your first week of any Stokastic Plus pass by using the promo code MLB Live. So that includes the Platinum plan, 50% off your first week, or if you just want to play baseball, jump on the MLB Weekly, same code, 50% off your first week. So that's MLB Live, all one word, all caps. It's for new users only. Fantasy Crunchers not included. It's always a paid add-on. You can join Stokastic Plus. Stop guessing, start winning today. That's actually not in here anymore. I wonder if that's still the tagline. Not sure. Stokastic Plus. Jump over there. Check it out, guys. Promo code MLB Live, all caps. Hit the thumbs up. I'm sure we're behind the curve on thumbs up, but we got more baseball to talk about. We mentioned, we teased this picture too. The Phillies at the Pirates. Another good spot in terms of the matchup, where I think the matchup's just really pushing this guy through. Ranger Suarez going for the Phillies. Mitch Keller answering back for the Pirates. We both are getting to some shares of Suarez. So let's start on the other side. Any love for Mitch Keller going up against the Phils here?
No, 409 expected ERA, 1.42 on the whip. Those numbers are high enough for me to give a lot of respect to this Phillies lineup. And just, I guess the strikeout rate being 1 of 5 is like in context of this slate is like not the worst. And it is a plus pitcher's park. The swing and strike rate's a little low for my blood. So kind of suggests that maybe he shouldn't be striking out 1 of 5. But I don't have any Keller interest right now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. If 1 or 2 shares trickled through as just a total wild card, I could maybe see it because he's 7,600. He doesn't project well or anything like that for me. But the strikeout rate has trickled up a little bit. The xFIP has come down a little bit. He's kind of rounding into form finally. This was a guy that we were, kind of excited about coming out of spring training. All the buzz was about his change to delivery and his velo being so high up, and just has not delivered. Usually he's delivered exactly what you would expect from Mitch Keller over the years. He didn't deliver any of the change we were promised. So let's talk about the guy on the other side then. I think we can both discard Mitch Keller. Ranger Suarez, guy that I'm getting a lot of, very similar to Johnny Cueto, based largely on the matchup and the price. Field looks to be in similar position as they were to Cueto, and he's a similar pitcher. So talk to me about Suarez. What do you see here, and how much of him are you rostering?
Yeah, he's basically the left-handed Johnny Cueto, if I'm just letting the stats tell the story. It's more of picking on a bad offense in a plus environment, PNC Park. I'm hoping for 15, 16 at 7,600. And basically a lot of my lineups look a lot like Suarez and Cueto at the top, and I have a ton of big price bats filling out the lineup. So it's not a confidence thing. It's just the Pirates are one of those teams like the Athletics that I just tend to pick on when push comes to shove. The lane of strikeout potential between their 4 through 8 is nuts. It's almost an aggregate 30% K rate against lefties, and there is a chance that Suarez can start dipping back towards his strikeout ability that we saw last year. That it is pretty much dissipated, but you always hope that, hey, it's in there somewhere. That 1 in 4 K rate from last year, the 11% swing and strike rate. I mean, he was so good out the bullpen and just hasn't translated that as much as a starter. But I don't need 30 fantasy points and a CGSO, man. I just need give me close to a quality start in 16. That's how poor his pitching is tonight.
Yeah, and it's just finding those right spots to jump onto to roster those big bats like you're talking about. We've got 2 explosive spots. We've got a couple spots we've already identified. Would either one of these teams be on that list of targetable offenses for you? The Pirates, for me, not necessarily. The Phillies, I feel like maybe, just kind of taking shares of where I get them. Doesn't really pop off the page for me. How are they looking for you? I'm curious about that, because it is a team that generally, their power shines through a lot, and they tend to pop up to the top a lot for me, and they're not really today. So I'm curious, how are you seeing the Phils?
Only 2 guys are getting respectable numbers in the bottom sector for me. It's Kyle Schwarber, surprise, and Derek Hall in the 6th spot. Okay. But he's also, holding on to a 29% K rate, and maybe there's some more big league sample size that needs to be added to maybe that brings some of these expectations down. But those are 2 for me. And I will be targeting the Phillies just generally. I do think they're pretty talented, and we know this Pirates bullpen has been a tournament winner in the months past. So I'm definitely in on a Philly stack.
Okay. So they're drawing a little bit of attention, but everybody in single digits on the DK slate, maybe a little easier to attack there. You're paying up a little around Schwarber, around Real Muto, but everybody else cheap. Nicky Castellanos remains very cheap across both sites. At 2,300, he's drawing 10% on FanDuel. That's a little lower than it was the other day. So I might be inclined to drop down into the middle of the lineup. It's really the one that stood out to me is Schwarber for 3,300 on FanDuel. He's pushing 17%. That gets a little concerning. But if you're pairing it off with like Alec Boehm hitting third for 2.9%, Realmuto on FanDuel only 2%, it's easy enough to stack them and offset that. So I guess there's no real concern around the ownership, and they are fairly cheap. So maybe when I do the sort here, they'll come up a little bit more naturally for me. Any specific bats from like 5 down that you want to call it after Castellanos? Would you drop? Well, you called out Derek Hall. Any love for like the full stack, the Stott, Didi, Matt Vierling portion of this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, Stott and Didi would probably be the two guys I would, especially Didi. Didi has a 153 ISO since the beginning of last year against righties. Certainly has not been the same, I guess, slugger, without the short porch. But in this particular matchup, Mitch Keller, his strikeout rate is so much lower against lefties than it is righties. A 16% K rate to lefties this season with a 282 average allowed. So there's hope for Didi to put the ball in play. And he does have an elevated ground ball rate, 52%. But if Didi's going to have a shot to, put that swing on, I'd be looking for him. And then, start with that same theory. But I have a little bit more proven track record, big league wise with Didi. So Derek Hall and Didi would be the two for me.
Yeah, Hall pops up for me as well. He's third after Rhys Hoskins just squeaks past him in my home run model, but he's right there. So I do like that spot. 2,800, 3,500 on DK, no ownership to speak of. So if you're going to Phillies, yeah, it makes some sense. I breeze past the Pirates because I'm not really targeting them, but anything to call out from the Pirates lineup? They are going up against a lefty. They do have guys who flash against lefties from time to time, like Chavis. Brian Hayes is always in the middle of that lineup. But anything you really like in that that you're targeting from the Phils or from the Pirates, rather?
Stack wise, no. But our boy Greg Allen, former Yankee great, he's one of those guys that he doesn't get a lot of big league play. Here he is batting second again for the second night in a row. He's bare bones min on both sides, and he has some speed. He stole a base yesterday, and in very limited sample size, he's shown some pop. So one of those guys that might be swinging for a job, whether it be through DFA waivers in 2 weeks or not. I kind of like looking at him. And then just Ranger Suarez being as risky as he is, he does allow contact to righties, and he has walked righties at a 10% clip this year. So Brian Hayes, Michael Chavis are two guys to look out for. But just pinching pennies. If Greg Allen was a 2K bare bones min that allowed me to go get Acuna, Schwarber, the Dodgers, whatever, I wouldn't lose sleep on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind some shares of a very low owned $2,200 3-position eligible Michael Chavis popping into my lineups here. He definitely can hit a lefty hard enough, but it's not a spot I'm really looking to go out of my way for, but I wouldn't take it out of lineups, like you said. Let's jump ahead to the next game on the list. I got to click around too much. I forgot to switch the run sheet into the order that's actually in my spreadsheet here, so I got to move between documents here, so bear with me. Minnesota Twins taking on the San Diego Padres in San Diego. Sonny Gray on the hill. Joe Musgrove answering back for the Pods. Musgrove, dynamite season so far. Sonny Gray, respectable enough year, going up against a lineup that has not been all that impressive and has been one that we've targeted here and there for with pitchers. Musgrove taking on the Twins, definitely some power in that lineup, but I think Musgrove's good enough pitcher to get through it. Do you like the two pitchers in this game? Are you getting to shares of each of them?
Some shares, yeah. Sonny Gray is one of those negative floors and 30-point ceiling type of guys. Padres are generally a team I don't hunt out for strikeouts, but this lineup does give us Voit, Mazzara, Grisham, and Kim that have 20+% K rates, and only Luke Voit is like ridiculous. So it's still a line who's going to have to put in some work. I think he's worth having some, like we said, if nothing else, just to diversify the portfolio and not be just all in on a Cueto and Suarez, but there's no warm and fuzzies on that. And Musgrove's another one of those guys we know that has the upside of an ace, and game to game, his floor is pushing negative as well. Back-to-back tough games, the Mets a tough spot, and then at Coors didn't really fare that well. But this season in Petco, he's averaging 21 DraftKings fantasy points per game. So he's been very serviceable. And like you said, today, 20 fantasy points, that dog will hunt to get you towards the top. So the pushback here is I got a lot of respect for the Twins when they're fully healthy. They are down Gio Urshela on the paternity list, but Arise is a tough cookie to strike out. And then you're dealing with Correa, Buxton, Polanco, Kirilloff. It's a very talented lineup. So it is a unstoppable force, immovable object type spot where I'm just kind of scumdackering the situation with the Padres stack being at the very, very bottom. But I do have more Musgrove than Gray, but I do have a little bit of both.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and that seems like a fair approach on the Scumdacker side, especially with the Twins so low owned on the opposite end of the Musgrove play here, getting some, okay power marks for sure. And he's a pitcher, like you said, that we've seen some good teams get to before, and the Twins could definitely be on that list. It's not a spot where I'm looking to get aggressively ahead of the field, and I think I'll probably have a little bit more Musgrove, it sounds like, than what you're looking to target, but he's around 14%. So if I'm in that same maybe 18 to 20% range that we were talking about for Framber, I'm kind of happy with that. I think that's a good enough spot. 32% on DK for 9,600. I think that price is worthwhile. I think it's worth kind of just eating some of that ownership and getting to him. So I'd probably look to be about that level on him over there. Talk to me a little bit more specifically on Twins bats. You mentioned that I is at the top, 8.5% strikeout rate over 365 plate appearances. Actually, a few more because I didn't update the stats today. But I mean, just ridiculous strikeout rate. Correa is great there. What about the rest of the lineup going down the list there? Is this a team that you would full stack?
In a sense of getting to 4 or 5, yes, I would full stack. It does drop off a cliff dramatically, I guess, as you get towards the bottom. Gary Sanchez, though, he's one of those that can catch you while you're sleeping in the 8 spot. So I wouldn't leave him out. And he's getting cheaper on both sides in terms of, we used to pay $5K for this man. So maybe I'd leave him in there. So yes, they are full stackable. But a lot of my interest is in the top 5, top 4.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's really, that's where it makes sense to target. Gary can always have a place in my lineup. Still a 46.8% hard hit rate, a 16% barrel rate for the season, over 291 plate appearances. It's only translated into 10 homers, but I know that the pop is still there. So I'll take shots on Gary when stacking Twins. What about the Padres on the other side, taking on Gray? Guy, you mentioned that, not necessarily the most reliable pitcher in the world. It gives up a fair amount of contact, not the highest strikeout rate, but not atrocious either. Are you going to Padres? It's a team I haven't stacked a ton this season, and I don't feel all that much that bad, poorly. I don't feel all that worse off for it, I think is what I was trying to say there. Padres, do you like them?
So I have 3 teams that almost never full stack. It's always a sub stack. It's the Padres, the Guardians, and the Nationals. Okay. It's so top heavy on a couple of guys where it's Machado. Okay, who else? And then you start handcuffing them to maybe a Profar. I did get to way more Eric Hosmer than I ever expected to waking up today, but that's because first base just kind of became a pit if you didn't pay up at the top and you started prioritizing some of these high-end outfielders. So I do have some more Hosmer, but it's more of a salary saving. I'm in a pinch than anything else, and he's in a good spot behind Machado, maybe a RBI potential, a little bit of perceptual protection with Voit behind him, and he's just one of those guys that's scrappy to strike out, but it's certainly not a talent thing. It's just a price thing.
And look, I mean, if you're settling on pods, I think that's a good one to land on. 2,400 for a 3-hitter. You can give me basically anybody hitting third at 2,400, and I'll have a little bit of interest, especially when he's 2% owned going up against a guy like Sonny Gray. And 277, 339, 391. Not a lot of power for Hosmer, but he's putting the ball in play. He's creating runs 8% above average or thereabouts. Again, didn't get the update in this morning, but we're generally in that territory. He's a productive guy, so I don't mind that. It's the back end of this lineup that just really drags it down. I think I don't get to a lot of that, so I'm not going to be really full stacking him either. But if I get a few shares of the top end, I'm happy there. Let's take a look. We probably got to make up a little bit of time. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, all those good things out there, guys. Get your ISO up, as we say on this show. That's your ISO, the number of thumbs that we've got. We're brought to you by Yahoo. Let's knock out the Yahoo read. It's probably around the middle of the show or probably a little beyond. Yahoo MLB. We partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this MLB season to bring you guys some great offers. Check out our exclusive limited time offer. Limited time, and this is going to be key in a minute. It gets you 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Remember the Platinum plan I was talking about before that includes everything? This is a free month of it. This offer ends after July 31st. Limited time. That's tomorrow. So there's not much time to take advantage. To qualify, you need to be new to Yahoo. That's an important detail. New to Yahoo. Sign up for an account via the link below that's down there. Make a deposit and play. That's it. Yahoo sends us your name. We get you. We reach out to you with an email with your coupon in it. You click the link. You set up your Awesemo account. Did it again. You set up your Stokastic account. and you're up and running, and you just hit the ground from there, and you've got access to everything, all the tools, all the content, every sport. So make sure you're using our DFS tools and content that are specifically designed for Yahoo too. When you're playing over there, it makes some sense to use the tools. And Gunn and I were talking about it pre-show. There's still not a ton of sharks on Yahoo. There's still, there are some soft landing spots on Yahoo to drop some lineups into. So really take advantage, use our tools, get over to Stokastic, take advantage of the free month. Jump on there, click the link down at the bottom, and start winning big, guys, with Yahoo and with Stokastic. Gunn, let's move along to St. Louis Cardinals with a pretty nice implied run total going up against the Washington Nationals. Dakota Hudson on the hill for the Cards, and Paulo Espino going for the Nationals. It was Eric Fede earlier in the day. Did the pitching change your interest in the Cards at all, or are you still going to Cards bats? Because I assume you were going against Fede.
Yeah, I was there no matter what. Espino certainly didn't shy me away. So let's put it, I'm not throwing either pitcher today, and I am pretty interested in the Cardinals. And Espino, not a big swing and miss guy, 18.6% K rate on the season, 8.7% swing and strike rate. The Cardinals lineup is dangerous. So 2 through 5 I don't know that we have any other team on the slate with like 4 straight 200 plus ISOs in their split. If we do, it's probably probably going to come in a lot higher owned. The Cardinals are actually my second highest owned stack on the slate tonight. We got them about 10%, 11% ownership. I am about 14%. So I like them a little bit more. And I've been one-offing a lot of these guys, especially on the FanDuel side with Tyler O'Neill at 2,900. I feel like he has a lot of oomph at that price point. And even Carlson, although I don't play him for a ton of power, he can get on, he can still base. So I do love the Cardinals stack. And then, like we said earlier, the Nats are kind of a team I sub-stack. Soto, Bell, and then stolen base threat Nelson Cruz in the mix.
That's a sentence I didn't think I was going to hear today. So let's talk a little bit on the Cards, because I do think it's an interesting lineup. Paul DeJong back in the middle of the lineup, back toward the end, hitting 7th there for the dead minimum 2,000. He's drawing a little bit of attention, and I think that's kind of taking away from the attention on Tommy Edman, who's hitting 9th, 3,200 on FanDuel, 4,000 on DK, drawing way less ownership. And I think Tommy Edman's the better of these two players. Yeah, he's hitting 9th as opposed to 7th, so maybe there's a plate appearance or a quarter of a plate appearance in there somewhere that we're going to lose off the top. But talk to me a little bit about like maybe going with some of those alternate plays like an Edman, wrapping them around to the top. Is that something that you're willing to do with Edman today?
Yeah, I like Edman, and he's a speedster. He'll still bags on you as well. And if he ends up in front of one of the top of the orders, he can still touch O'Neill and Goldie mathematically. So I think it wouldn't be that negatively correlated. And a stolen base, well, I don't care about if we're losing half an implied at bat at that point. And he's on the road against the Nats, so I'm expecting 4 or 5 no matter what. So I like Edman quite a bit, and that 4K price point on DK will probably shoo a lot of people away. I don't know that we really don't see 4K 9-hole hitters much.
No, yeah, definitely not. And that's the thing. Edman, he's not the player necessarily that he was last season in a lot of ways in terms of, well, actually the run creation's a little higher now that I'm looking at it. So the run creation's around league average. He's stolen 20 bases. He stole 30 last year, hitting for similar amount of power. So he is kind of the same guy that was a frisky, productive guy for this team last year. So just guy on my list to get to. Even Andrew Knizer, the catcher, I don't mind getting to some shares, but yeah, really it's all 1 through 5 there. That just dynamite end of this lineup. Nats on the other side. Yeah. Handful of shares around the key hitters, like you said. Anything else to highlight from this one?
Nope.
Let's move on then. Arizona Diamondbacks, 4.1 run implied total. We've mentioned this spot a few times. The Atlanta Braves, 6+ total implied run total. Just a great spot for the Braves here in terms of offensive upside. Corbin Martin on the hill for the Diamondbacks. Ian Anderson answering back for the Braves. I assume there's not much Corbin and Martin in your life. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how much Ian Anderson you get to?
I'm not really that there on Ian Anderson either. Matter of fact, I don't think I have any. And maybe it's buyer's remorse, and I feel like looking at the ownerships on this slate on pitchers who are coming in over-owned and under-owned, you're going to have to assume some negative leverage somewhere if you're going to keep it tight. I think Ian Anderson is one of those guys that he keeps coming in with maybe more ownership than he deserves, and today he's almost double his chance of being a top pitcher. And I just feel like his results are pretty meager slate to slate, and his 1.6 whip, his 4.41 expected ERA, and that 19% K rate. I'm not all too enthusiastic. I guess I also let weather play a little bit of a role. It's looking like we can lean towards this game playing and not really being impacted much by rain. But I wasn't really that there on Anderson. And the D-backs as a team, there are strikeouts in this lineup. So I understand why people would be there, but this is the one spot where I'm letting ownership push me away, and I got to find somewhere to get different. So Cueto and Ranger Suarez don't let me down.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, if you ask me, like in a vacuum, who's the most talented of those three pitchers, I would probably have said Ian Anderson, at least at the start of the season. But the numbers are similar. The walk rate is higher than those other guys. The whip is higher. So yeah, I think I'm with you actually here. He's drawing like 9.3% on FanDuel. I'm curious to see how much he's coming up because he projects like the bottom of the top third of all pitchers, but that's kind of the lowest point that I'd want to get to on the one pitcher site here. So I'm curious to see how much I get him relative to the field. 22% on DK. I feel like I'd be under that, but the price is all right. 6,900. I can see why people would go there. What about the bats on the other side? Then you mentioned, you don't have that much love for the Diamondbacks bats, a little bit of power in that lineup in some spots. Are you getting any shares of the Diamondbacks?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the weakness of Ian Anderson is only being targeted really by one guy. Anderson's allowed a 322 average to righties with a 1.7 home run per nine. And there's two righties. One of them's Christian Walker, who's got a lot of power. So Christian Walker would be that guy for me. Just generally, though, I'm just hoping that, the Rojas, Thomas, Ketel Martes don't produce a ton of strikeouts, and maybe they scrap together enough hits and walks. And walks is another big problem for Anderson, a 14% walk rate to lefties so far. So if they can be a little bit more patient, run up that pitch count, get on, and then just make him to where he's kind of irrelevant at the end of the night. That's kind of my plan here. I don't have a lot of D-backs, full-fledged stacks.
Okay. I like it. And yeah, you can, maybe attack that walk rate. Not the worst bullpen in the league to be getting into on the back end of that equation. They've got some studs in that bullpen, but I think there's reason enough to get to a handful of shares preliminary, particularly around the power. The Braves on the other side kind of buried the lead on this one. Ton of ownership going to the top 5 hitters on both sites. Back into the lineup, not all that popular for a team with such a high implied total. How much are you stacking the Braves? Who are you looking at specifically? How are you putting the lineup together? Talk to me about this team top to bottom.
Yeah, a lot. We're looking at almost a Coors-esque run total. 6.2 is what I'm looking at right now. Corbin Martin, a 5.29 expected ERA, 1.6 whip. He's going to allow traffic, and he's very, very hittable. Surprisingly hasn't allowed a homer yet, but I feel like tonight just might be the night because this batted ball data is horrendous. 30% line drive rate, essentially to both sides of the plate. Doesn't keep the ball on the ground, just a 23% ground ball rate so far to righties, and the hard contact rate well above 40%. So massive spot to project for power. And then speaking of bullpens, I'm not that scared of the D-backs bullpen. So Braves are looking really, really good. They are my highest owned stack between their one, then Cardinals. And then I just undercut the Dodgers just to be different on this slate, not because I didn't think otherwise. But yeah, Braves are looking really, really good. The only thing I was watching was the weather, and I never really felt like the weather was going to impact the bats. I just thought that was something for pitching. The weather, like we saw yesterday in the Yankee game, the rain can create sloppy defense and more opportunity for fantasy points for us. So there's nothing not to like for the Braves.
I like that call, and yeah, I'm just knocking out my sword here. So if it looks like I'm not making eye contact or anything as you're talking or with the people out there, that's why, because I'm looking at some of these numbers here and trying to get my stuff in order. But Braves pop into the top of the list for me. I'm still getting to a decent amount of the Dodgers, getting to some of the Cards in there. So we'll see how it works out as I do the final version of this. Too much Ranger Suarez, too much Johnny Cueto. This is going to be an interesting slate. Anything else to call out from this one? I do think on the back end, particularly on FanDuel, Michael Harris, still only 3,300, drawing 2% ownership. That's kind of interesting for a guy hitting 286, 317, 495, 209 ISO, creating runs 23% better than average. He's a $5,100 player across sites on DK, drawing similar ownership. So I'm kind of excited about that spot on the FanDuel slate. And then, Eddie Rosario, I mentioned on the show yesterday, also only 2,300 on FanDuel. So another spot I wanted to call out. Anybody else particularly in the lineup that you want to mention before we move on?
I mean, particularly there's like 5 Braves in the top 6 or 7 on my bomb detector. And so that's I'm hoping they go full Joe Ryan on him. But Acuna has the highest grade or excuse me, Austin Riley has the highest grade for me in my home run model, and then it's Acuna.
Okay. Yep. There are several of these guys are right near the top, I imagine, as I hit the sort. That's worth checking real quick. I got Acuna, Olsen, the two of those guys directly behind Tyler O'Neill, who we talked about before on the card. So that Atlanta St. Louis spot is looking pretty sweet again. I've got Austin Riley sitting fifth behind those guys. Arenado Goldschmidt not far behind that. So there is a ton of power in those two spots if you can figure out how to put them together. Let's move on. We got to move on to another spot with a ton of potential scoring. Coors Field, everybody's favorite. I hate Coors Field. I'm just going to throw that out there, go on the record right now. Everybody, I think, knows it already anyway. But we've got Clay Kershaw on the mound for the Dodgers. So at least one highly, highly capable pitcher. We haven't talked too much about him in summing up the pitching slate because he's pitching at Coors. So tell me how much Clayton Kershaw you're willing to roster today. And then if there's any shares of Kyle Freeland against the Dodgers, good luck to you, but let me know.
Yeah, I think Kershaw is playable, and I think the reason being we just trust our tools at Stokastic. Take a look at the top pitchers tool. We give Kershaw a 15% chance of being a top two pitcher, 1% ownership. That's 14% positive leverage. You never see that, especially a guy like Kershaw. I get it. It's Coors. It's a tough spot. But you don't even have to match that 15%. You can get to 5-6 and still be, positively leveraged and say you're there because this slate sucks for pitching. So I'm there, and this, I'd be speaking the complete opposite if he came in at 50% or 20% or something like that. But that's a lot of opportunity, especially when I'm, pointing out Ian Anderson being, almost negative 10% ownership. So take some of that negative leverage from Ian Anderson, give it to Clayton Kershaw, and spin the wheel, make a deal. Obviously, I'm going to have some Rocky stacks in the portfolio, but Kershaw is an elite pitcher, and he's had a bumpy road in Coors, but he can still get it done.
Yeah, I'm not going to particularly worry about Clay Kershaw pitching anywhere. I'll just take my shares, and when he's that low owned, it definitely from a DFS perspective makes some sense. Do you grab some shares of Rockies hedge stacks on the other side of that if you're getting a little over the top on your Kershaw shares?
Yeah, for sure. Spearheaded by Chris Bryant, CJ Crone, guys like that. I also just remember, was it 2 days ago? Tyler Anderson dropped like 24-25. 24-25 is probably a top 2, top 3 score on tonight's slate. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. It is not something we haven't just seen in this series.
Yep, absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. And a guy like Kershaw, it wouldn't shock anybody to see that kind of a score from him and a slate leading score, even at Coors Field. What about Dodgers bats in this spot? I assume there's no Freeland in your life. So you're grabbing some Dodgers bats on the other side. And how are you doing it relative to the ownership of the field? Because it's kind of a key spot. I think you mentioned earlier you're going to be a little below.
Yeah, I was just undercutting the 1-4 ownership we have on them and just running a lot of 1-offs, 2-offs, stuff like that. It's certainly not a pushback on the spot, a 6.8 run total. It's a really good spot. It's a really attackable spot. I'm just undercutting it due to the ownership. I still am getting my highest owned 1-offs when I'm not full-fledged stacking Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, and then every day Trace Thompson's at the top of the bond detector, and it keeps homering. So I'll be there on him again. There are a lot of cheap guys in this lineup as well. Hanser Roberto, 2,500 on both sides, batting fifth. Big spot for him, especially a guy that has been historically very impossible to strike out from opposing lefties. Big RBI spot for him as well. And I think he just lands a lot by happenstance and because of that price point. But my only way to get different is just not going crazy with the 5 ends as much as the field.
Yeah, and I think you pick and choose some of those spots like an Austin Barnes on FanDuel. I mean, nobody's excited to roster a catcher on FanDuel to begin with, let alone one hitting 8th, let alone one hitting 167, 301, 314 for the season, creating runs 17% worse than average. But he is in the lineup at Coors Field, hitting around all these guys could potentially correlate with them, hitting in front of a 4% on Cody Bellinger, who also only costs $3,000. I think that's an interesting spot on FanDuel. Just grab the back end of the lineup and then pair it with anything. Or, work your way up from the bottom where you're looking at like Muncy, Thompson, Alberto, and those guys, and just try and offset some of the popularity. And then you get to the lower owned pitchers, and I guess you're golden, assuming that Ranger Suarez and Johnny Cueto are going to come through for us. Liking this less and less as the show goes on. We've got 6 minutes. We've got 2 games. Jordan, we're probably going to have to bypass the old Hall of Fame slideshow there. But guys, if you hit a top 3 in a tournament with more than 5,000 people, we're going to give you a free month of platinum. Stokastic at Stokastic HOF is the Stokastic Hall of Fame. Just grab a screenshot with your awesome. You got to have the Stokastic. Damn it. I've done it more times on this show than I had done it all since the name change. But Stokastic, you have to have the avatar in there when you do that. Top 3 any contest over 5,000 people at Stokastic HOF. 2 games left on the board. Chicago Cubbies at the San Francisco Giants. Drew Smyly, Jake Junis. Any love for either one of the pitchers? Cubs have been at least targetable for most of the season with pitching. So are you going to any Junis here?
Hey, I think you justified Junis. I'm not expecting like 100 pitches out of him, but if he fell into 14 fantasy points against the Cubs and Oracle, I get it.
Makes sense. And then what about on the other side? Any love for Drew Smyly? It does look like he's pulling a little bit of, I assume, cost-based ownership, but the Giants have been a team that have been kind of making pitchers pop a little bit for me based on some of their inflated strikeout rates lately. So you getting any Smyly along with the field on DK?
I wasn't, but it's kind of like Anderson. I understand it at that price point. If it's 12 to 14, that dog might hunt as an SP2. But I tend to, I don't know if any team faces lefties as much as the Giants, because I swear we're talking this same platoon conversation 3 times a week. I just like this Giants team against lefties. Ralph Slater, Mercedes, Wilmer Flores. Good luck, God bless, go win some money. Like I don't, I like that combo quite a bit. And we don't usually see Ruff leading off either, and I like Ruff a whole lot for putting the ball in play against Smyly. So I'm not really there on him, but I understand if you are.
So safe to say you're more excited about the other side of that equation than going to some Giants bats there. So is that the sum total of what you wanted to say about the Giants?
Yeah, I got you. 1 through 4 definitely are my favorite to pick apart here. You can add in David VR at the 7th spot. You do have to wrestle with the platoon, the sub outs, the pinch hits, all that good stuff. It is what it is. You just deal with it. But Mercedes being 2,400, I like that spot for him. And Darren Ruff, I like him for a homer tonight. So even if I'm getting 2 or 3 at bats, a home run is value, man. And it's just something we have to deal with.
Yeah, and all 3, Ruff, Belt's pulling a nice little home run mark. David VR's pulling a nice little home run mark for cheap and no ownership toward the back end of that lineup for me as well. What about on the other side, Cubbies? Do you like anything from top to bottom in the Cubbies lineup? I'm primarily looking like Contreras, Suzuki, and Happ.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave off Ortega either leading off. He's pretty cheap. Junis does struggle against lefties so far this year in terms of power. And really that goes back the last 3 years, 1.6 homer per night or better for the last 3 years. So definitely a spot for Ortega or Ian Happ to get into one. But Patrick Wisdom, also somebody that you can put in your pocket and maybe gets into one off the bullpen.
Yeah, I shouldn't have left Wisdom off that list either. Monster hard hit rate, barrel rate, and the highest home run mark in my home run model here as well. 3,000, under 2% ownership on FanDuel, 38, under 5% on DK. Nice solid call there. So yeah, maybe top 5 on the Cubbies are playable there. Let's take a look with 3 minutes or so left at the last game. Fortunately, I don't think we really need to discuss these pitchers. Glenn Otto going for the Rangers, taking on Chase Silseth for the Angels. Any love for either one of these pitchers? They are drawing, a little bit of ownership. They're cheap. I'll say that.
Man, I don't want to do it. I don't. But this Angels lineup has so many strikeouts that it's not the craziest thing to throw some Otto into the blender and hope for 10 to 15 fantasy points. Right now, I don't have any. But if you look at the K rates, Luis Rengifo is the only guy under like 25%. That's nutty. That's stupid. Angels are getting like athletics levels of bad, and they're just kind of in the shadows of how good Ohtani is and how dangerous we know Jared Walsh can be. But the rest of this lineup is very beatable.
Yeah, and it is a team that I've been attacking recently for strikeouts, and you've seen that on the site and the tools a lot for strikeouts in the top pitchers tool. It just kind of inflates the value. And yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, if we're taking shares on Johnny Cueto's 17% strikeout rate, then probably take some shots on this one. It's not like the Angels are all that much better than the Athletics at this point. So what about bats in this one? Are you grabbing any Rangers stacks going against Chase Silseth? I assume they're going to be popping up a little bit for me, flashing some nice power marks 1 through 5 for me.
Yeah, I definitely I was hoping that Corey Seager would be all right to play this one. Silseth has been struggling to miss bats here. I like this lineup a little bit more balanced when Seager's in it, but Semien, Jonah Heim, Nate Lowe, Adolis Garcia, and Cole Calhoun, all justifiable. No warm and fuzzies, just a bottom end 2-4%er, diversify the portfolio a little bit and get against a beatable pitcher and a beatable bullpen that gives up a lot of homers if you can stay away from Raisel Iglesias.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm looking to do with those stacks. They're cheap, they're low owned enough, and I'm seeing enough power around the Adolis Garcia, Cole Calhoun, and basically the guys that you mentioned there. Don't have that much love for the back end of this lineup. What about the high strikeout Angels? There is some some pop, arguably, at least in this lineup. We know that Ohtani's got it. We assume that Joe Adell, everything is supposed to be true about him, that he's got some pop, but definitely struggles to make contact with the ball. Any love for the Angels in a full stack form or any one-offs?
Just one off. So a couple. Ohtani, Ward, Walsh would be the guys that get you the most, and Ohtani and Walsh, without saying, would be the 1-2. But I don't really get to the full stack.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be full stacking. If a few shares of like a super cheap Joe Adell popped up for that home run upside, maybe I'll take it. But, it's just a cost play at that point in the home run upside play. And he hasn't really flashed it at the major league level. So favorite stack, favorite pitcher overall before we punch out, and a home run call.
Cardinals. Flip a coin between Cueto and Suarez. Please, Lord, don't let me down. And then to get away from a chalky homer, let's see who's up here that we're not. Cole Calhoun is 4 1/4 on the bond detector. So low sample size, but I didn't want to give you guys like Riley Acuna, the regulars.
Yeah, that makes sense. I tell you what, I'll throw a Cubby into the mix there. Say Suzuki popping up a little bit, poking his head above water in my home run model, right behind his teammate Pat Wisdom, who I mentioned was leading the Cubs there. So interesting one. I'll take him just for the hell of it, making an interesting day there. I think I'm with you. Need some Johnny Cueto love. I'll take the Braves as my favorite stack, but everything's past lock now anyway. Guys, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. Have some good luck out there. Make sure you're tuning in tomorrow. We've got MLB Live Before Lock at 12:15. That's going to be Eitan and Eric. And then we've got Jason Floyd and Chris coming at 2 to 3 with NASCAR Live Before Lock. So don't miss those two big shows tomorrow. Like, subscribe. Gun, tell them where to find you.
Twitter, YouTube /Gundecker.
There we go. Appreciate it, pal. Great stuff today. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you around.